As we get deeper into the season, it's getting tougher and tougher to make those right flex calls and wide receiver calls. I mean, sometimes it just comes down to the matchup, right? I mean, how else can you decide?
Well, after last week, I'm just going to consult Yahoo. I mean, if they knew Jerry Jeudy was going to be a good start, what else do they know?
Well, let's go through all the wide receivers that could help you in week 11. And keep in mind, there are two teams that are off. It's going to be the Colts and the Saints. And there are some wide receivers you don't question. They are must starts. Jamar Chase, Puka Nakua, Jackson Smith and Jigba, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashee Rice, and Drake London. Before we break down those matchups, don't forget, hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. We greatly appreciate everyone who's already done so, but if you haven't, take a second, help us get to our goal. We're trying to get to 100K before the season ends. Now, the first matchup of the week is Thursday night, Jets at Patriots. Two teams going in very different directions. And the Jets, it was the defense you were worried about after the trade deadline, and now as if you were so encouraged by the passing game. The only receiver that would have mattered, Garrett Wilson, another knee injury. I mean, he might not even play anytime soon. I don't even think this wide receiver room is worth talking about. The Patriots, yes, they've got some good players here. And Drake May, looking like an MVP candidate. So we got Stephon Diggs, Demario Douglas, maybe Kayshon Boutte comes back this week. And now we got rookie Kyle Williams making plays. So who do you like this week?
I think you got to like Diggs. I'm going to say Diggs is solid this week. Jets play the 7th most man. He leads the team in targets per outrun, and he's second in yards per outrun and fantasy points per outrun versus man. I'm going to take a chance on Demario Douglas as a flex again this week. I know it wasn't a big game for him last week, but again, he's good against man. He actually leads the team in yards per outrun and fantasy points per outrun versus man, and is second in targets per outrun. And then Bootie's going to be what Boutte pretty much always is to me, an upside flex if you want to take a chance.
Yeah, so part of this depends on whether Boutte comes back or not. It seemed like it was mild, a good chance he does. So if I'm assuming Boutte plays, he's always just one of those upside flex plays, right? If he does play, I don't know, now with Williams carving out a role for himself, he'll probably continue to get more run. I don't know if I can do it with Pop, just not enough there. Stephon Diggs is the one. He's always just going to be solid, right? He's never going to have a monster game necessarily in this offense, but he does get that target share as you mentioned. Now for the Sunday slate, let's start with the Commanders taking on the Dolphins. Yeah, this is another wide receiver room that it's not as bad as the Jets, but still. Terry McLaurin already ruled out before we even started the week. Again, Deebo Samuel is there. He was pretty quiet. A bunch of guys, Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, Deebo's probably the only one that's even in consideration here. I'm just going to say a flex, and only because Terry's out again, but you can't even love it here. He wasn't even that good last week. He scored, but that was pretty much it. Just a flex.
Yeah, he's flex worthy because he's still technically the number one guy there. He did score last week, and yeah, the Dolphins aren't great defensively, so just a decent flex. Now on the Dolphins side, Jalen Waddle certainly showed again that he's clearly the number one target. This is a pretty good matchup on paper, so I wonder how high can you go on him, and also does Malik Washington get any interest?
I think Malik Washington gets interesting. It's the Commanders. They're terrible. They're just awful on defense. I think Malik Washington, I'm going to say flex. And Jalen Waddle, I am going to say strong start this week. It's the Commanders. They've been getting torched lately on defense. Strong start, Jalen Waddle this week.
I'm with you. He should be strong. I was on the fence about mentioning Malik Washington in the waiver video. I don't feel like you should have to go and pick him up. You can stream him if you miss out on your other targets. More like a sneaky flex, but look, he does have some upside in this matchup. We got plenty more matchups to break down. First, I need to remind you that in addition to getting your fantasy lineup set, put your picks in on Underdog. And if you haven't tried it yet, well, you get a new customer special. If you sign up using code ENDGAME for the first time on Underdog, you get this gimme. It's Drake May just getting a yard. That's for new customers. Also, as soon as you play $5, you get $100 in bonus funds added to your account on top of the deposit match. More bonus funds. Use code ENDGAME and try Underdog now. All right, now we got the Packers taking on the Giants this week. Guess what? that Packers wide receiver room is in flux once again. Just when you thought maybe Romeo Doubs might look like a solid option, nope. Did nothing before leaving that game early on Monday night with a chest injury. He'll probably be questionable at best. Christian Watson made it through the game, apparently. And then Dontavian Wicks randomly showed up. Still a mess.
Still a mess. I will say this. I'm not starting Dobbs, even if he's healthy. Wicks, Golden, if he plays, whoever. Like, no thank you. But I do actually like Christian Watson this week. I know hasn't had that big game since coming back, but the Giants do play the fifth most single high 60% of the time. He sees a bump in yards per route run, targets per route run, and fantasy points per route run against single high. It's not, you don't love it if you start Christian Watson, but he's got upside this week.
Never a sure thing, but yeah, he should be the go-to target here against the Giants. Like you said, favorable matchup. You can't ever go overboard with Watson. He's just a risky high upside flex. Now on the Giants side, well, this will be interesting. We may have a different quarterback. Jackson Dart, of course, concussion protocol. And we have a new head coach. That's for sure. Brian Daboll is out. So if it's Russ, if it's Dart, is anything going to change here? Do you feel the same about these Giants receivers?
I mean, you got to feel better about them with Dart than you do with Russ, but I don't think it's a huge change here. I'm going to say both are flexes, but I definitely prefer Slayton this week. Wan'Dale Robinson, not a good matchup here. Packers are allowing the fewest points to slot wide receivers. This is not a good spot for Wan'Dale, but it is a pretty good spot for Slayton. The Packers play zone almost 80% of the time. His yards per out run, fantasy points per out run go way up versus zone. And Green Bay more like middle of the pack against outside wide receivers. So I'm going to say Slayton this week. Even if it's Russ, I'm going to say a strong flex.
Yeah, so you remember early in the season, those couple of games Russ was the starter. Wan'Dale, he went off in that second game. Remember, that was the Cowboys defense. I'm not taking away too much from that. I do think Wan'Dale is probably the favorite target here over Slayton, but at the same time, the matchup kind of favors Slayton. I mean, look, the Giants are going nowhere fast. I think they're both just flexes.
Do you want to get advice from Pierre and myself at the tip of your fingertips? Start sit, waiver wire, trades, and more? Well, you can do all of this and more on our new app, Draft Lane. We have the ability to view your roster, waivers, and more to give you the right feedback to make the perfect choice. Download Draft Lane from the App Store or Google Play, or use these handy QR codes. And first-time users can use code ENDGAME to get 10 free credits and get your questions answered today.
This week, we get a rematch of the Texans at the Titans. Not the most exciting passing offenses, but hey, Davis Mills making Nico Collins look like Nico Collins again. He looked like the first round pick he's been supposed to be this whole season. All right, so first of all, what do you take away from last week? And second of all, what if CJ Stroud comes back? Does that actually make you feel worse about Nico Collins?
I mean, I don't want to say I'm going to feel worse about Nico Collins if CJ Stroud comes back. I'm going to say either way, Nico Collins got to be a strong start this week. Titans allow the 9th most points to outside wide receivers. They play the 8th most zone. He sees an increase in targets per outrun, yards per outrun, and fantasy points per outrun versus zone. Like the Texans offense just as a whole has looked better even before CJ Stroud had that concussion. So I'm going to say strong.
I agree. I mean, look, it's the Titans. It's the Tennessee Titans. No matter who the quarterback is, honestly, it doesn't look like a big difference these days. So Nico should be strong. Interesting, too, because they've kind of got all their receivers involved now because Kirk is healthy and the rookies are getting involved. So I think that's just helping Nico, right? It's not just a one-man show. But as far as the other Texans receivers, not enough to make me interested. And as far as the Titans, like before you just skip ahead, look, maybe Calvin Ridley comes back this week. It's possible coming off the bye. If so, is there a chance he becomes fantasy relevant again?
Barely. I'm going to say risky flex if he plays, only because the Texans play the 5th most zone. And his targets per outrun does go from 0.11 against man to 0.27 against zone. But very risky here. And then Chimere DK, no, too risky here.
Yeah, too risky across the board. Remember, the Texans basically are the best defense in the NFL. You could argue maybe Denver, whatever. It doesn't matter. You're splitting hairs. Texans defense, Titans offense, no thanks. And in Week 11, the Panthers are going to take on the Falcons again, this time in Atlanta. All right, so Drake London, we see you. Penix is in. There's one thing he can do well. Let's get the ball to London. Now, the Panthers haven't done a great job getting the ball to their number one receiver, Tedero McMillan. or really any other receiver. So do you think anything changes this week in this rematch?
I doubt it. I mean, they just want to run the ball, hide Bryce Young, don't let him throw it deep, don't let him do anything here. Tet barely even a flex, and just a floor play at that.
Yeah, didn't love him last week. Just came through with a few points. Again, we need upside. We want touchdowns more than like once every few weeks. It's just, again, it's a low-powered offense and through the passing game. So he's just a flex. And for the Falcons, I will say Darnell Mooney did actually catch a pass last week. I don't think that inspires me to want to start him. What about you?
No, you got a bunch of targets, but like you said, I mean, Penix can only throw, I can't even say he throws accurate passes to Drake London. It's just Drake London is so big and so long, he can catch Penix's inaccurate passes. Darnell Mooney does not have the advantage. You got to sit him.
All right, now Bears Vikings part 2. We'll see what happens here when these teams meet again in Minnesota. Let's start with Rome Odunze. Again, this is what we always say. Every week is different. Coming off the 0. Had a nice game as we thought last week. Does he do it again? And then DJ Moore would be interesting because he was kind of limited throughout the week with practice, and then shoulder might have flared up at the end of that game, although we haven't heard anything yet. So let's break down this wide receiver room.
Well, I don't feel nearly as good about Rome Odunze this week as I did last week because Minnesota is a very zone-heavy team, 71% of the time. They also play too high most of any defense. The reason why I liked them last week, Giants play the most man and a ton of single high. He's not nearly as good against zone and too high, but I'm still going to say he's solid. I actually kind of like Luther Burden this week. I'm going to say a risky flex. He actually leads the team, albeit it's a small sample, but he leads the team in targets per out run versus too high, and he's second in targets per out run versus zone. But still, you can't feel great here, but he has been coming on a little bit more. And DJ Moore, I'm done with this guy. Done.
Finally, it took a long, look, if DJ Moore is out, which is possible, he's been banged up. Yeah, Luther Burden, he becomes flex worthy. I agree. But also, I think that would make Rome Odunze a strong start. Look, I know it's schematically not the best matchup, but they have rediscovered the fact that, hey, if we throw the ball to him, good things happen. He didn't smash when these teams met in week 1, but Caleb Williams did not look very sharp then. This offense has just gotten better as the weeks go on, so I'll put him as a strong. Now we are actually going to talk about Justin Jefferson. He wasn't in the must-start section if you missed that. So is there reason to worry? I mean, obviously you broke this down in a panic video. Same thing with Jordan Addison. And then I guess we have to talk about Jalen Naylor, who actually led the team in receiving yards last week. How do you see this breaking down against the Bears?
Yeah, I'm going to start with Justin Jefferson. Strong start here. I'm pretty much not benching Justin Jefferson. They only have like one good corner left. It's Tyreek Stevenson. Not worried about it. Darius Slayton had 4 catches, 89 yards against his defense last week. I think Justin Jefferson can do better than that, and he's still got 12 targets. I'm still going to say Jordan Addison, a strong flex. 11 targets last week. It's got to happen at some point, right? And again, against the Bears, I got to take a chance. Naylor is the one I'm just going to say a risky flex. I almost want to say sit. This feels like an absolute trap here. 6 targets last week, and somehow he's the guy that had the big game. Risky flex.
I mean, yeah, sure, there's really no floor for Naylor necessarily, but I don't know. McCarthy was even talking him up after the game, saying we're going to see a lot more of speedy Naylor. He likes him. Again, he's not going to out-target the other 2 guys, but they're connecting. I think he's a high upside flex against this Bears secondary, which is still not very good. I'm starting Justin Jefferson. I don't care. We can just move on from that. Jordan Addison, I need to see more here now. I mean, the targets are there, but McCarthy has been a little more inaccurate down the field, and that's where Addison usually, kind of makes his day. So I'll say he's just a flex. Now let's break down the Chargers and the Jaguars. A lot of receivers to talk about here. All right, so it appears that Ladd McConkey is now doing what we thought he would all season long, be the number 1 guy there for the Chargers. Keenan Allen keeps fading. Quentin Johnson randomly appears, disappears. Does anything about this matchup make you favor one guy more or less?
Well, not necessarily the matchup per se, but more like the way I think we're getting some clarity on this wide receiver room. I think it's become 2 guys, and that's Ladd and QJ. Keenan Allen Only 2 catches each of the last 2 games. Remember, one of those catches last week was that little pop pass to give him the receptions record for the Chargers. Like, he couldn't get it this week or next week, but whatever. Like, he's hardly running any routes, hardly getting targeted. You cannot start Keenan Allen. Lad, he's got to be a strong start. He's looking like the guy we drafted, the guy we saw last year. How do you not start Lad? And then I'll say QJ again. I'm going to say a strong flex. I know it wasn't a big game last week, but the Jags do allow the 3rd most fantasy points to outside wide receivers. Strong flex this week.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. I won't drop Keenan completely off the map. I still do think he has touchdown upside here, so I could flex Keenan just to give me some sort of a floor. Could flex QJ to give me some sort of a upside potential if he scores, and then Lad. I mean, yeah, you almost want to set and forget, but again, we haven't seen quite the massive ceiling of some of these other receivers, so I just say very solid. All right, now for the Jags. All right, so Jacoby Myers, a modest debut. Parker Washington, solid game. A lot of targets, surprisingly, there. But then BTJ might just come and mess everything up again. So if that's the case, then how do you treat this room?
Well, I'll say BTJ, even if he somehow plays, I'm not starting him. I mean, he's got an ankle injury, probably not even close to 100%. Hasn't even been good. No, not doing it with BTJ. I'll say Jacoby. I feel like he can be flexed. He did have a short touchdown called back by a penalty. 2nd week in this offense, but this is a tough matchup. Chargers are a good secondary, so just a flex. Parker Washington's got to be the guy you prefer. I'm going to say a strong flex because there is a weakness to this Chargers secondary, and there's not a big one. It is to the slot, and they do play the 5th most zone of any team, and he does see a bump against zone.
Yeah, so last week I even said if BTJ plays, I don't care. I'm not playing him. I'm going to repeat that this week. And yeah, Washington, Myers, both flexes. This offense just as a whole, really, I mean, look, give Liam Cohen credit. He's got this team playing better and staying competitive and winning, for the most part. They're trading off a lot of that volume for efficiency in the passing game. And so just not enough here to go around. So these guys are really just decent, but not high upside flexes. Now the Bucs taking on the Bills this week. Plenty of upside in this matchup. Let's talk Emeka Egbuka. And the guy just continues to roll on in this matchup against the Bills. Any reason he won't?
No, I don't see any reason why he won't. Gets an insane target share. Bills play the 9th most too high 55% of the time. He's actually better against too high. He's got to be a strong start. And then look, fire up Tez Johnson again as a strong flex because he also sees big increases. Targets per outrun, yards per outrun, and fantasy points per outrun versus too high. And he keeps scoring. Might do it again this week.
Yep. And as I said in the waiver video with Tez Johnson, it's not just that he's finding the end zone as he has been 4 TDs in the last 4 games. He's actually giving you a floor. He hasn't gone under 40 yards since being a regular in that lineup. I mean, Evans and Godwin aren't close to coming back. Tez will be a factor. So good flex. And then Egbuka is borderline must start. Now, the Bills are definitely ready to move on from last week and forget what happened. So, do they bounce back in the passing game? What does it mean for guys like Shakir, right? He's clearly the number 1 there. And then Keon Coleman, he made his appearance that he does every few weeks or so and tries to pretend he's fantasy relevant. I'm not buying it. Are you?
I'm not buying it either. I am not starting Keon Coleman. Don't fall for this trap. I'll say Shakir this week. I didn't love him last week. I don't love him again this week. Bucs play a ton of too high. He sees a big drop in his numbers against too high, but he's still the number 1 guy here. He's got a floor. So I'm going to say just like lower end of the solids.
Yeah, I'm with you there. A solid, but I don't feel a big Shakir game here. I mean, he really should have done better last week, but that wasn't on him. It's just the whole offense. Just kind of odd here, but he's still going to probably lead this team in targets. I mean, he's a guy, at least you don't have to sweat being in your lineup. Now, when the Bengals take on the Steelers once again this week, you got to feel good about any receiver that Joe Flacco throws to. Almost. All right, Jamar Chase, no doubt. T. Higgins, I mean, how can you not feel good? The last time these teams met a few weeks ago, he had 6 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Any reason he can't do it again?
No reason at all. And I think we put him on the booms that week. And the main reason why is because the Steelers play the 5th most man. He has the same targets per outrun rate as Chase against man, but a higher yards per outrun and fantasy points per outrun rate against man. Not saying he's going to be better than Chase, but I am saying he's a strong start.
Yeah, again, this week, I feel like Higgins is borderline, just no doubt. The upside is there. I mean, Steelers defense hasn't been quite as bad the last couple of weeks, but they did just give up a 100-yard game, touchdown to Ladd McConkey. I think T. Higgins can do pretty much the same thing. Now, on the other hand, the Steelers, this offense is looking basically like I expected it to. Aaron Rodgers just looks like he's done. Physically, I mean, maybe mentally too. All right, so I know you've been out on DK Metcalf, but this is the Bengals, right?
It's the Bengals, but the last time they played, he only had 3 catches for 50 yards. Like, I know you want to say it's the Bengals, but I still don't feel great. I'm going to say DK Metcalf, just a risky flex here, even against the Bengals, and I'm going to say no to Calvin Austin.
Yeah, I mean, just look at, again, what's happened recently. DK Metcalf has done a whole lot of nothing. Again, not his fault, but isn't this kind of what we were worried about before the season started? That's exactly what we're seeing. All right, now let's talk Niners at Cardinals. So, I'm going to just assume Ricky Pearsall doesn't play again. What about Juwan Jennings?
Well, look, Kyle Shanahan said he expects him to practice this week. Maybe this will be the week. Maybe not. I don't know. Even if Pearsall plays, I don't want to take a chance here. Jennings, I'm going to say solid this week. Like, I will say the Cardinals do play a lot of zone, and he's better against man than zone, but he's getting this kind of a target share. He's got touchdown upside. He's in this 49ers offense. I got to say he's solid.
He's been better lately. He has been getting targets, but one thing I'm concerned is, last week he put together a decent game, but CMC really didn't, right? It was one of those weeks where he just, wasn't massively involved. Kittle is getting more involved. He's finally getting healthier. His target share is increasing. So I feel like Jennings has a role, right? I think he's just more of a volatile, high upside flex, at least in this matchup. Now on the other side, we got the Cardinals. I mean, this looked a little bit more like what you would have thought Jacoby Brissett-led offense in Arizona would be. But that was a tough spot, right? Maybe they get better at home.
Yeah, and against this 49ers defense, just absolutely decimated right now. He's been much better against single high, and the 49ers play single high 55% of the time. Brissett is giving him a ton of targets. I'm going to say Marvin Harrison, a very solid start this week.
Yeah, it's crazy. He got 12 targets last week, but only 3 catches. I mean, give credit to the Seattle defense in part, but still, this is one of those things. It's going to correct itself. Not a super great smash spot, but he should be solid. Well, this week, the Seahawks are going to take on the Rams. You got Puka, you got JSN, 2 absolute studs here. Well, you also have, Rashid Shaheed and Cooper Kupp in the mix. Maybe Torrey Horton plays this week for Seattle. How does this break down? Shaheed was very quiet in his Seattle debut.
He was very quiet, but what was interesting is he actually was a slot wide receiver. Kupp got pushed to the outside. Kupp did have that one big play, but that was pretty much it. I'm not starting Kupp, and I can't say I love Shaheed this week. The Rams play a lot of zone, and he has not been good against zone. But he does have the upside. I got to think he's be more integrated this week, so I'm going to say risky flex.
Yeah, I kind of need to see it. I mean, sure, he'll be a little bit more involved, but this offense still feels like it's pretty much all JSN, and then the other guys kind of show up once in a while. I don't love this matchup against the Rams. I don't want to really play Shaheed or Kupp or even Horton if he does play. Now, I do want to play Devontae Adams pretty much just every week, no questions asked. But remember, toward the very end of last week, he was holding his lower back. We're obviously going to monitor this throughout the week, but is there any reason to fade Adams?
I mean, only if he's not practicing all week and there's, worry about his injury. But McVay says he feels like he could have gone back in the game if they needed him to. I'm not too worried right now. Plus, the Seahawks play the 3rd most zone and the 2nd most too high. His numbers are much better against those defenses. I know it's a tough Seahawks defense. I don't care. This guy has touchdown upside every week. I think he's got to be a strong start.
It is a tough matchup. I mean, in Seattle, we always think that tough run defense. They're actually allowing the 2nd fewest yards per target to wide receivers. So Adams is, I don't want to say touchdown dependent, but I mean, who cares? He scores almost every week. So I just don't think he'll have a huge game. I'll say he's very solid, though. Now, Chiefs, coming off of their bye week, are going to take on the Broncos in Mile High. This should be a good one. So you still just start Rashee Rice. He's good to go. Do you start any other Chiefs receiver here?
The only one I can even consider is Xavier Worthy, and even then, how good can we really feel here? He's been so far behind Rashee Rice in targets. We have not seen the upside. Xavier Worthy, just a risky flex. Everybody else a sit.
Yeah, it's crazy. Worthy hasn't scored in a month, and he hasn't done a 100-yard game all season. Where is that ceiling? And now with Rice back, it's not getting any better. So barely a flex. And then I guess we have to say Hollywood could also be a flex because at least he scores some touchdowns once in a while. And that would be about it. And then on the Denver side, again, a lot of people stressing about Courtland Sutton. Is he losing his grip on the number one receiver job? Look, it's not that simple, right? They used multiple guys, right? The target share is going to be equally distributed. Okay, fine. But who's got the advantage this week?
I don't know if anybody has the advantage this week at home against this Chiefs defense. The real worry for me, well, there are two worries. Yes, we've seen Franklin more involved the last month than Sutton, but also Bo Nix. It's like Bo Nix plays well for one quarter or a drive or two, and then the rest of the time he's terrible, right? And it's like, okay, that's good enough for the Broncos with this defense, but it's not good enough for Sutton and Franklin, although Franklin's been okay. I'm just going to say both flexes here in a tough spot, but if I had to pick one, I think I would pick Franklin because he actually has been more involved lately.
Yeah, Sutton, just the last two games, 54 yards combined. He still always has that TD upside, so I don't think you can just say straight sit, but he's a flex. Franklin's a flex. Yeah, this is the problem when your defense is so good and your quarterback isn't that good. The Ravens taking on the Browns in Cleveland this week. All right, so let's talk about Baltimore here. We got Zay Flowers, of course. Rashad Bateman made an appearance by scoring a touchdown. Feels like they were kind of forcing that to him in the end zone there. Do you have any strong feelings about either of these guys in this matchup?
I have a strong feeling for both. I'm not starting Rashad Bateman. Now he's dealing with some sort of ankle injury. No thank you here. Zay Flowers, I'm going to say very solid start this week. I know he hasn't had that big game. He's just kind of been a floor play, but the Browns play the third most man, second most single high. His targets per out run, yards per out run, and fantasy points per out run are much better against single high. Not to mention, the Browns allow the 8th most points to outside wide receivers if you take out last week's game where the Jets didn't even throw the football. I think this could finally be the big Zay Flowers week. Very solid.
Yeah, that Cleveland defense you attack through the air, as you mentioned. This is why we were high on a guy like Gary Wilson, who knew he would A, get hurt, and B, be in a game where somehow the special teams kept scoring. They didn't need to pass. But anyways, this is a much better offense with Baltimore. So yeah, Zay Flowers, really good. Can't go crazy, but very solid. And then no need to start Bateman. All right, let's talk Jerry Jeudy. I mean, honestly, it was kind of a joke, right? Or like, why would you want to start Jerry Jeudy? He came off of zeros the week before. Nothing changed for the better in this offense. Why did Jerry Jeudy suddenly have a good game as soon as Cedric Tillman came back?
I have no idea, but look, he got 12 targets. It's the Ravens. Now, look, the Ravens have been better since the bye, but I will also say the Ravens do play the 6th most man. He's better against man. There's definitely a big part of me that worries this is an absolute trap, and this week he's going to go back to being absolutely terrible. But the Browns may have to throw it. They may be playing from behind. I think you can flex them. You cannot start Cedric Tillman, though.
No, Tillman obviously needs some time to kind of work back from that injury and get involved and actually maybe develop some chemistry with Dylan Gabriel. I mean, look, Jeudy, this feels like such a trap, but I guess you could flex him and see if he does something again. On Sunday night, it's going to be the Lions taking on the Eagles. This should be a very competitive game, but let's see how much the passing games are involved here. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, you don't question it, right? Jameson Williams, he actually stepped up last week. Now, of course, you're hearing all this talk about Dan Campbell. He's calling the shots now. Is this all J-Mo needed? Is he going to actually be unlocked the rest of the season?
Let's hope so. I certainly hope so, because I drafted a lot of Jameson Williams this year. But I will say, that was the Commanders. This is the Eagles. This is pretty far apart as far as like bad defense to good defense goes. You got Quinion Mitchell out there, probably going to spend a lot of time on Jameson because we know Sun God spends a lot of time in the slot here. So, look, he's got upside. He's been more involved the last 2 weeks. Dan Campbell's calling the plays. I'm going to say strong flex, but I'm a little nervous.
And, I'm right there with you. And this is a very different matchup. And, good for him. He got his season highs, finally looking like he's involved. Usually when a guy has his season best game, he doesn't do it again the next week. He's a high upside flex. Now, as far as the Eagles, all right, so we had a pretty good feeling about Devontae Smith. He came through. I did not have a good feeling about A.J. Brown, and he did not do anything. So what happens this week?
Yeah, we called Devonta Smith a boom last week. He had a very good game. We didn't look. I remember we even got a question on one of the streams like, why are you guys so low on A.J. Brown this week? This is why. This was a better matchup for Devonta Smith than A.J. Brown. That being said, it's flipped this week. This is a better A.J. Brown week. The Lions play the second most man and the seventh most single high. These are the coverages A.J. Brown dominates. I'm going to say A.J. Brown this week in a game that you got to think will be much higher scoring than that Eagles-Packers game. Very solid start. I'm going to say Devonta Smith just normal, solid this week. I know he's been really good lately, but he's not quite as good against these coverage shells.
I sure hope it's higher scoring than the Eagles last week. I think they're both solid. Definitely feel better about AJB, but of course there's always risk. And the same thing, Devontae Smith, the way he's been playing lately, you pretty much can just lock him in if you're in a 12-team league as your wide receiver too. And then Monday night, we're going to see the Cowboys against the Raiders. CeeDee Lamb returns. That's a good thing. All right, George Pickens also back on the menu for fantasy owners. What does he do against this Raiders defense?
I think he's going to do pretty well. You look at the Raiders allow the seventh most points to outside wide receivers, and despite how they looked last week against the Broncos, I'm not banking on that. This is the Cowboys coming out of the bye. I think George Pickens very solid this week.
Yeah, the only concern possibly is that the Cowboys just don't have to throw the ball very much against Vegas. It is possible, but Pickens doesn't need a lot of volume in order to produce, so he is solid here. And then as far as Raiders, look, what's left here, it's Trey Tucker and probably guys you shouldn't be starting.
You shouldn't be starting Trey Tucker either.
Oh, well, there you go. Look, he is, the number one receiver. The Cowboys, I get it that their defense is better because of those trades. I don't think it's elite here. I think you could flex Trey Tucker based on the fact that they may have to pass a lot. All right, there you have it. Those are our feelings on wide receivers for Week 11. If you missed the running back video, you want to help at quarterback, tight end, anything for this week, you're going to have to check out this playlist.